there are powers that be that are trying to destabilize shit. That's obvious.
Yeah.
And in the middle are kids who want a job and read a classified ad somewhere in Jalisco, fly there or go into or arrive by a bus, then get pulled into a yard somewhere, and they get a knife tossed in the middle of them and say, whoever fucking wins this match gets to join us. And somehow that's being funded by people buying avocados at the grocery store in the U.S. Somehow that's being funded by federal programs in parts of the U.S. that are very permissive to the drug uses and creating these giant drug markets in places like Los Angeles and other parts of the country, who are indirectly or directly basically fostering these businesses that these organizations have. Somehow us, in the U.S., trying to be a good person and kind of like, hey, this is just an addict. This is not his fault, Sometimes people are saying like, hey, the borders crossed us. Yeah, but there's a border there now, and people are paying to get across it to a very evil organization that does horrible shit. And once they get across, a lot of them don't achieve the American dream. A lot of them actually get eaten.
That's right.
So there's no way of tracking numbers of the disappeared once they cross the border because they're undocumented.
Mm-hmm.
So
we can't even track the numbers of people who just come over.
Yeah. So I'm all about people finding a better opportunity for themselves. I'm an immigrant myself. I understand it more than most. I also understand that there's people making a business out of that.
Absolutely.
I also understand that there's people trying to virtue signal through their support of immigrants and the open borders policies and all of these things, and will call me a fucking sellout for speaking against immigration in that way.
You've spoken on, to be clear, to defend you, you've spoken on both sides of that very strongly today. It's interesting to see where you land.
Because I have to be.
You're going to get shit from everyone.
For me, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I raised over $3,000 for the Ryan Terry Foundation, one of the Border Patrol agents that were killed by some of those Fast and Furious guns. I did that because I get it.
Yeah.
And also to get an opportunity to say, I raised money for that man and his family. And also for the ability to say that there are other families in Mexico that have no names, that have no funding, that have nothing behind them, that were killed and murdered by some of these guns that were directly put into Mexico by the authorization of a man named Eric Holder. Eric Holder, who's somewhere out there enjoying his life. And there's a kid in Mexico, a girl that doesn't have an arm because of some of those guns.
It's crazy.
And doesn't have a father and doesn't have a mother. I'm trying to bring light into some of these voiceless, empty stories that you don't hear a lot about out here. I'm very suspicious about the media in the U.S. and its blackout on all of these issues until now.
Until now.
Yeah. You want to talk about the essence of good that I've managed to kind of like figure out for myself in the U.S.? If I can see a light in the U.S., it has been places and platforms like yours that allow somebody like me who, dude, I basically went to high school, and then I did some shit for the government and that left me heavily damaged and traumatized. And eventually they got rid of me. And
they got rid of you.
Yeah. That's what they do with everybody that once they're done with you in the government, they get rid of you somehow. For me,
they do that for you?
For me, it was a clear choice between work with us or die, basically. They put me into a room and they said, hey, we're going to work against this cartel only. You want to join us? And I said, no. Because eventually the institution that I work with got to a level of corruption where it just was unsustainable for me to stay.
Did you discuss that? Did you call people out in back rooms and say, I know what the fuck you are?
At that moment when I got that offer, I had no backing left. For a long while, I worked in that office with backing of powerful people, including ex-governors, including people that are in politics, including ex-military members, I have a military recognition by the general that was in charge of all operations in that region. I have him on my podcast. So I had that level of trust. And then all of a sudden I found myself in a room with somebody telling me, like, you were going to work for this cartel. I resigned that same day. Like, it's like...
You worried about getting a bullet in the back of your head when you walk out?
Yeah. That's why I left. That's why I left, and that's why I lived with a Navy SEAL friend of mine for a bit in California while I was figuring out my immigration. The level of and I'm just one story, man. Like, there's people like me all across Mexico. People that were trained, fostered, brainwashed, built up to be this force, set loose.
Yep.
And then after everything was done, you're like, well, some of the shit you did was probably not good. Some of the people that you were boss were probably bad. So it means you're bad and you're corrupt. All this shit you did over here, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this stuff over here now because we represent a different political candidate now. So you're the villain now. So it's basically, what do people like me do? Like, what did the people that I work with back then do? They not a lot of them had the opportunities that I had immigration wise. So a lot of them went to work, you know.
And we talked about it earlier in the really heartbreaking example of your friend, where you told the story about seeing him telling you to get out of here, and then, you know,
he's
10
gone.
minutes later he's gone. And I said to you, like, what choice does someone like that have? This is someone who just disappeared one day when you were 16 because he was tapped on the shoulder by the wrong guy because he lived in the wrong place at the wrong time in the world. Yeah. And it makes you think. It's like, you know, you mentioned the Ukraine-Russia war as well. And I see all kinds of problems there, obviously, with the governments. But who's dying down there?
Yeah.
Is it the fucking guys in the suits or the track suits in fucking back offices or whatever? Is it Putin? No. Yeah, it's a bunch of boys. It's 18, kids. 19, 20, 21-year-old kids dying by the hundreds of thousands because men in suits in back rooms decided that this is the best way for them to solve their little fucking sandbox disagreements together. Yeah. And I don't see any difference in the war, and I put that in air quotes, it's direct quotes, it's not air quotes, that's going on in Mexico in this case, where kids are just born into an environment and they're told at some age, hey, you're on Team A and you're on Team B. And by the way, if you got to Team B and Team B happens to be the government, eventually that's going to turn around too and you're going to be playing for Team A.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy.
This war has eaten many like myself, and I didn't get like people like you're so lucky. If people only knew the amount of issues that I live with because of it, it's a pretty hard life. I mean, a lot of the work that I do, moving around and training people and doing all this is basically a way of me doing therapy, like fucking sustaining myself, just giving myself a purpose. I sent a training cadre to the Ukrainians. A group of people that I trained and have some training from me to do medical training for the Ukrainians.
When was this?
This is probably
3
years ago. 3 years ago, around that time. And more so than anything, I just wanted to like listen. Like, hey, like what the fuck do they fucking think out there? I got a lot of stories about foreign fighters showing up there. Some Mexican foreign fighters showing
up in Ukraine?
Yeah, basically fighting for the Ukrainians because they believed in this defense of this.
Wow.
So there's a bunch of South Americans in there as well, Colombians, from all over the place.
Holy shit.
And how quickly the dissolution of what they were doing there started kind of like manifesting the corruption on the front lines as far as equipment, black markets around firearms and shit like that. Just the mismanagement of that war. Yes, the Russians were clearly the aggressors, and like all that was happened. But also, Putin did warn them many times not to put them in NATO and whatever. But the main thing I got from them is just this clear: this war and conflict is sold to youth.
Yes.
As this, I don't know, man. Saving Private Ryan. I don't know, like a war like that war is gone. Like there's, if anything, the concept of an enemy. Like this Nazi guy, he's an enemy. The Nazis,
Yeah.
that's an enemy. Hitler, screaming, that's an enemy. But now, like, who's the enemy?
There's moments that happen in this job. Today when we're talking is 5 years to the day since I started doing this, and I've been really privileged to talk with a lot of amazing people from a lot of different types of life. I do all different topics on here. But there are moments in many of the podcasts I do that I don't know how much people can see it at home on the cameras, but I'm here in person, and there's just a different feeling, and you're like, ooh, I'm going to remember that tape right there.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it forms a pattern over time. And I've had Andy Bustamante on this podcast 6 times before. Okay. So when he was first coming on, we were in my parents' house, and I told him not to cut his hair, which was good advice, if I may say so myself. But I remember the second podcast we did, we recorded it the end of June 2022. It was episode 107. There's a couple moments in that podcast that really stand out. But as far as like seeing how the world moves and how some of these people think, because, Andy was CIA and probably still is, he had this line in there, maybe like a couple hours into that podcast, where he's explaining the mentality of society and how it turns in on itself when it can't operate around a common goal. And he literally is going through this, and he goes, we need an enemy. And I'm like,
yeah,
play that back real fast. And this is a guy who, I'm not allowed to say yet where he was undercover, but he goes on and he discusses a lot about China, and from a place of he understands that and what that is from a GDP perspective and a threat perspective. But I hear that and I go, how much of that is not Andy, but a lot of people who, have like him, who have been told hey, this is what it is, and then have anecdotal experiences that may be able to back that up, start spreading a message that then gets to everyone, that starts to train their mind that this is the thing we all need to coalesce around. And by the way, that's the bad guy, so let's fucking go to war. Yeah. I think about that a lot.
Yeah. I remember watching Sicario and seeing the terrorists make it across the border and blowing themselves up next to the Border Patrol agents. And this whole CIA being sent out to Mexico, and basically how that kind of cast out this signal, and that's usually what happens. I don't know how much the CIA is involved in Hollywood, but there is a clear effort, I guess, being done to make whatever enemy is Mexico.
You see it as Mexico.
I mean, that's what we hear on the news a lot. That's what we hear from the White House right now. So I don't know. And I don't see the whole aspect, the whole thing I've been trying to kind of explain throughout this conversation is that both sides are to blame. Both sides have villainous actors. Both sides have politics that are fucking very contrived and very evil in a lot of ways. And both sides are being told by their elected officials that the other side is the enemy.
Yes. You know what's crazy to me on what you said a little bit ago, and I didn't respond to it, but I should, because you make an amazing point. I was talking about the corruption in the Mexican government, and then you said, well, what about the corruption here?
Yeah.
And you know what my mind did right away when you said that? My mind here went to stocks and bonds, and, they're just paid off, and, they help out Big Pharma and shit. And then my mind in Mexico went to bodies and fucking blood and guts and gore. One has an image that I can see in my head that looks violent. The other one has money sloshing around that leads to those things, not just there, but also here. Yeah, and so maybe to look internally, the corruption here actually isn't all that different from there. I think you make a good point.
It's just, it just goes the long way about it.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's very different to go into a room and shoot up a party with a bunch of kids with AK-47s because they represent an antagonistical cartel of the political campaign that you're running, Mm-hmm. And another thing is basically allowing a pharmaceutical company to just sell billions of dollars worth of a very specific drug that just makes everybody junkies. That creates this epidemic that somehow has influenced even fucking drug markets in Mexico, in cartels, to produce more of this substance, to feed a giant hunger in the U.S. to escape reality, and also to see the amount of people that are truly innocent. Kids going to a party, trying to experiment. I mean, remember when you were a kid and you would find a joint on the ground, you would be like, "Yay!" Now it's like,
what's in it?
Right? Medication, bogus medication. I mean, cartels have been utilizing pain pill presses and stuff like that to make medication like objects that are laced with fentanyl. And you think you're taking a pain pill, and you're not.
And
so,
some of these places you were saying are in the U.S. where they do that.
Yeah. And again, the whole Americans need to just get this through their head.
Yeah.
The cartel issue doesn't end at the border and never has ended at the border. El Mayo Zambada learned most of his tradecraft by a former Castro police officer who then moved to Florida somehow and then may or may not have been involved in the Bay of Pigs. I don't know. There's a bunch of stories around that. He learned most of his tradecraft through that guy in Los Angeles. And then went back, and we're here now. This has never been a Mexico issue. This has been a regional issue, originated itself in the U.S. They utilized Mexico as a training ground for the Contras. Yep. They also utilized Mexico as a training ground for some of the revolutionaries, the Cuban guys. I mean, the Che Guevara and Castro would fucking drink coffee at this Café Tacuba place in Mexico City while they were planning the liberation of Cuba. So Mexico has been a fucking center of operations for a lot of shit in the past, And the U.S. in a lot of ways has been very directly responsible. First through its combating communism and the spread of communism in Mexico while that was going on in the 60s, leading to a fucking massacre of students and a president that was on their payroll. To now this problem that it's now seeming to prioritize by making cartels a terrorist organization and focalizing all their efforts against that, and just pointing the finger and that the problem is over there, right? And we're all. What about Chicago, which is a hotbed for cartel activity? What about most of the Midwest, where the drug route goes from Texas all the way up into the East Coast? What about California, which is basically
fucking crazy?
What about all the kingpins and distribution cells in the United States? We hear every now and then operations there was an operation called Operation Anaconda, which caught a bunch of new generation cartel members in the U.S. So I know that they are happening, but where are these major figureheads of organized crime in the United States that distribute and that maintain control? Where is this drug just materializing itself once it gets across the border?
No, it's turning a blind eye. I agree. What was this Operation Anaconda, though?
Anaconda, yeah, it was a federal operation in the U.S. probably 5 years ago.
Okay.
That focused.
So this isn't
targeted,
yesterday.
No, it targeted specifically new generation cartel members, and I think it caught one of El Mencho, the head of the new generation cartel's daughter. I think was caught up in that.
Oh, can we pull this up, Alessi?
So it's. I get it that their operations have happened in the U.S., but it's.
Yeah, we got it. Okay. Yeah, just hit the Wikipedia one. Oh, no. Oh, Operation Anaconda Cartel.
A new generation cartel. My eyesight is fucked. Sorry.
It keeps on bringing up this Afghanistan thing,
no,
but that's not it.
Maybe I'm misremembering the name of the operation.
All right,
so new generation cartel arrested U.S. members operation.
Okay, that's 2025, so that's a no.
This is 2024.
12 cartel members sentenced for drug trafficking. 2024.
Okay, so they're sentenced. So 12 drug traffickers tied to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel have been sentenced in between 4.5 and 40 years in federal prison, announced U.S. Attorney for Northern District of Texas, Leah Simonton. Francisco Javier Rodriguez Areola, a top source of supply charged in the case, was sentenced Tuesday to 40 years in federal prison for conspiracy to possess with intent.
Apologize. I'm misremembering the name of that operation. Again, a lot of head injuries.
No, all good.
But there's basically, they have done sweeps, but it's usually just like a barrage of them, and then they just... And these guys get replaced like the next day.
Yeah, they're like weeds.
But, you know, people living in Arizona can tell me if I'm full of shit. I mean, the cartels are definitely operating in Arizona.
Oh, for sure. That's what.
And it's very overt.
You make this point, Ed, about the U.S. and Mexico being kind of trained to dislike each other or see the enemy in each other.
The current programming is of that.
So, who do you think's doing that? And as a layer to that question, maybe the better way to ask this is, as best as you can tell, with all the micro investigations on a global scale that you've done, right?
Yeah.
Who runs the world?
I mean, who's the money? Who's the money behind Claudia Sheinbaum and her presidency? And you know, yes, we can say cartels were involved in that. Yeah, but there's bigger money and bigger influence behind that.
You talking like BlackRock?
Yeah, I am talking about.
You talking like the core four here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And who is not on behalf of the current administration here in the U.S.? The same people.
Right.
So I think there's something to be said about that. And the fact that they're both being antagonistical against each other. You know, the people of the U.S. love Soros, and George Soros. Yeah, he's real. Like the current president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, who is to the left of the political spectrum, who's all about all of these woke ideologies that are now kind of being shit canned in the U.S. They're going the other way in Mexico. So if we want to talk about power structures higher up, I mean, the cartels are power structure, but they're not, you know, they're not the Illuminati.
Right.
Like, who's above that? I don't know. I just see BlackRock, Soros entity around the current administration in Mexico that is like, fostering that. And I see an antagonistical administration in the U.S. by a dude that was probably almost murdered by some of these interests. Probably, I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. So you see, I don't know. I mean, that's what I've managed to see. I'm not a journalist, by the way. I am a guy that worked operations, and I worked intelligence, and I just did a lot of research, and I studied a lot, and I've worked against some of these organizations at a macro level, in a regional level, in a way, in a very successful counter-narcotics operation that is probably the only successful ones that Mexico's ever had. Yeah. In northwestern Mexico, in the areas that are operated in. We took Tijuana from the number one city, most dangerous city on the planet, to not even being on that list. And we were allowed to do the job that we had to do for a moment, and then that went away. That's where I get my experience from. And when I start looking at people at this global scale now, which is like, for me, it's surreal to be here on this platform with you guys talking about some of this shit like this. Whenever I talk about villainy, the media, the traditional media, is one of the biggest fucking villains out there. And I say that as somebody from Mexico that never saw the atrocities that I went through being covered by U.S. media. It would all just like...
Yep.
When I look at some of these things, it comes from a few places as far as how I try to figure things out. Number one, the money. ¿Dónde va el dinero?
Yep.
La mano que roba se esconde, la mano que gasta la delata.
So the hand that robs,
the hand that steals hides itself, but the hand that spends gives the other one away.
Right.
It's something I learned from a fucking very brilliant fucking man, Lieutenant Colonel Lizola. If he's out there, shout out to that guy. A lot of the money in Mexico right now is betting on Mexico becoming the biggest industrial plant on the planet. They're seeing China probably going to take a walk in the park pretty soon. 10 years down the line, who knows? That's what I hear.
So you're from like this eye-hand perspective.
It's not even that I'm from that perspective. I mean, you see all these people showing up at the border. They might be all part of a giant military operation to invade the United States covertly, Or they might be people that are like, fuck, China sucks. Let me figure out
Or both.
Or both.
Yeah.
But I think I've managed to see a bit of both.
Okay.
There's no fucking migration to China that I can see. There's a bunch of empty fucking cities out there.
Mm-hmm.
There is a bunch of companies, and again, this is not. I've followed Peter Sahan. I've never talked to him before, and I've heard some of his opinions. Some of them are interesting. Some of them, I don't know.
He speaks on a lot of things.
He speaks on a lot of things, but I'm probably on the same boat as him as far as China's going under in a few years, probably. I don't know how long, 10 years maybe. I don't know. But if people are doubting that, like, oh yeah, you're full of shit. China's about to fucking take over the world. Then why are all their fucking industrial plants moving to Mexico?
I mean, my counter to that would be they're moving a lot of, not just industrial plants, they're moving a lot of things around the world to buy influence.
They're moving to Mexico because they're running out of hands. I think that's what's happening. And also the cost of moving things from Mexico into the United States, which is their fucking biggest market, would be fucking...
Right there.
So... There's a few things. Mexico's about to become this giant industrial plant, probably going to replace China in the next 10 years, and the U.S. probably knows about that, and also your enemies probably know that. There are talks and plans of a new Panama Canal going across Mexico.
Yeah, what's going on with this? I've heard whispers, but I haven't looked into it.
They're trying to figure out a way to basically make a Mexican Panama Canal.
Okay.
And that would be huge if that happens. And that would benefit the Mexican people greatly, maybe, depending on who's in charge, or it would benefit foreign powers and people that didn't give a fuck about Mexico and its people. So I don't know. There are many things that are setting the stage for Mexico to be basically this giant economic powerhouse that could have control over its own destiny, or can have others controlling its destiny. And I think in a big way, the United States wants to control that destiny because it's thinking about America first. And I get it. I understand that aspect of it. And on the other end, there's a bunch of foreign entities trying to influence Mexico and its government, foster dissent and conflict, pump substances into Mexico, influence political candidates on one side or the other, and basically foster this lawlessness in parts of its institutions that are now fostering this phenomenon of narco politics.
Think you only need sunscreen in the summer? UV rays are sneaky. Not to mention things like pollution and blue light exposure that quietly wreak havoc on your skin, speeding up cellular aging. That's why you need a broad spectrum sunscreen every day. My favorites, OneSkin's SPFs for the face and body. OneSkin is the only skin longevity company proven to reverse cellular aging. Their SPFs block UV rays with non-nano zinc oxide and neutralize the free radicals that come from UV, pollution, and blue light with a potent blend of antioxidants. And the mastermind ingredient behind it all is the one you've heard me talk about in the past. OneSkin's proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient to target a root cause of skin aging called cellular senescence. You'll only find OS1 in OneSkin's line of products, so be sure to add OS1 Face SPF and OS1 Body SPF to your daily routine. Head over to oneskin.co and use code Julian to save 15% off your first purchase. That link is in the description below. You guys have heard me do multiple ads for OneSkin now over the past several months, and I actually don't have the product sitting next to me at the moment because I used the shit out of it and need a reload right now, and OneSkin's sending it this week. But I personally love using their OS1 products for your face and below the eyelids. It's something I started working into my nightly routine and even my morning routine as well. Having used these products myself for a while now, I can tell you that you need to try using the OS1 products at OneSkin too. As I said, the OS1 peptide is the first ingredient to help your skin look, feel, and behave like its younger self, and you can get access to it along with 15% off OneSkin's products by using code Julian at oneskin.co today. That's 15% off at oneskin.co using code Julian. Please support my show and tell them Julian sent you. Invest in the health and longevity of your skin with OneSkin. Your future self will thank you. And those countries deal directly with the cartels in many cases themselves to be able to do this business and get permission. So the cartels are basically just for sale.
Yeah. Mexico is part of a giant proxy war that's probably going on. And some of the people on the other side of that proxy war are probably
the
People's Republic of China. And that's an aspect or an element of it that doesn't get talked about a lot, I think. And the final part, I think that people should really pay attention to as far as this whole issue. is if immigration is such a big issue in the United States, where's all the immigration reform?
Well, I've been saying that forever because, like, even before Trump came to power or came up in 2015, the big issue here was you didn't have any good situations or any good scenarios in the sense that there were people who were either totally anti-immigration and like not looking at where it could be beneficial and where our country was kind of built on that, or there were people who were like, well, since our system's fucked, we got to let everyone else in. The system's set up for people of means. It's set up for people who need to hire a lot of different lawyers, go through a lot. I mean, you've lived it yourself. I'm preaching to the choir here.
I had to prove my marriage was real, and I had to.
How do you do that? How do you prove it? You have to.
So this is a weird.
Oh, they take you to a back room and they say, "Get it on."
They separate. No, they separate you. They separate you. They ask you questions. I had my daughter with me. Right?
Oh man!
I had my daughter with me, and an album of pictures of me and my ex-wife, all the way back to like when we were 15 or 16, because we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
Our families were like friends, and that wasn't enough. I had to go through 3 or 4, if you count the last one, 4 interviews. Obviously, probably my background was like a thing was I trying to figure out. But I had to go through 4 interviews. Meanwhile, a person of like West African descent next to me who was going through the same process got his green card in his first meeting because of a quota that they had.
A quota?
Yeah, and he couldn't speak English. And
you speak American English.
I'm like, hey, and also I have a kid, and I kind of worked like, you need to come back again. We need more. That was wild for me.
Yeah.
The other thing that was wild for me is coming out of the immigration process and getting handed a bunch of information pamphlets and ways of getting government money.
Ways of getting government money?
Yeah. So like, hey, welcome to the United States. This is how you can get on all this type of welfare. And you should live here because if you live here, this is going to get you access to this, this, and this, and this.
Oh, my God.
Mind you, I'm Mexican. In my mind, I'm like, tengo que trabajar. I fucking work. I got to go to work. Right? And all of a sudden, I have this portfolio like, I qualify for this. I qualify for that. I should get medical exams and I can qualify for this money. So that's the reception that some parts of the United States have to people coming into this country legally. A shitty, horrible immigration process that is very unfair, with a giant fucking line across the street that people cross or jump over. Every now and then I get like, hey, Ed, like you're fucking very anti-immigrant. Like what? Like I'm not at all. As a legal immigrant, it makes me feel a certain way when I see a bunch of Venezuelan dudes riding around mopeds in New York with a debit card full of fucking cash, living in a fucking hotel.
Yep.
I didn't get any of that. I had to beg people to be able to like, hey, I just came here. Like I'm trying to figure it out. Can I fucking stay at your place for a bit? And I need to get a job. Or I had to fucking beg people.
Yeah.
Figure shit out. At that time she was 2.5, almost 3.
An American daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her mom's American. Her mom's parents are Americans. And she's working, but it's California, so I have to.
Was she from San Diego?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you knew each other.
Yeah. So I had to figure shit out.
Yeah.
And I can understand why a large segment of people who are of my descent get pissed off when they see the immigration process now.
Yep.
And they see all these people get free money, free stuff, free plane tickets.
Crazy.
Flown around.
What was that app? Like the one?
The CB1 app?
Oh, my God.
Again, I understand. Yes, some of these people were at risk, but we can't generalize it, though. Mm-hmm. Some of these people were at risk, but some of these people were fucking gang members. I remember going on a flight I think it was Dallas, and there's like 4 of them, Venezuelan dudes, with a portfolio thing they were carrying for their paperwork because they don't have IDs, so they have to fly with this paperwork they give them. All of them were wearing hoodies, covering up their heads and their arms. It's fucking hot. It's Dallas in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Covering some pets.
And
some things.
I'm not vilifying all immigration into the
I
US.
understand completely.
But you have to realize that as an immigrant myself, seeing some of the shady shit that happens around it, you're like, motherfuckers. Ukrainian refugees come and camp out on the border in Tijuana.
They go to Tijuana?
Yeah, they spend probably, I don't know, let's say a month, and now they're all across. So now all of them are in the U.S. immediately. I'm not saying it's because they're white, although it might have something to do with it. I'm not saying it's that, but then you get the Hondurans and Venezuelans and stuff like
They're
that.
like,
and
fuck them.
They make a giant camp in the north. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of weird shit. I'm not saying it's maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's because the war was going on, so they qualify for refugee status.
Yeah.
But, we have to realize now, more than ever, that this immigration system is fucked.
Yes. It's so fucked.
And people need to realize this. And again, something I said 4 years ago on another platform. Every single Mexican that makes it across that border illegally now has a legal claim for asylum because they're fleeing a country that is being torn apart by a terrorist organization.
Yeah. I don't think they thought about that one.
Hopefully there's somebody in charge that is thinking about a lot of these issues. But people asking for a path to citizenship right now, everybody that made it across that border after the kickoff of the drug war, like I started being active in 2004. I think the drug war probably kicked off in 2006, 2007. Again, hazy. Got hit in the head a shit ton of times. Time blindness is an issue that I have. Legit.
You're doing pretty well today.
So all of these people that made it across that border illegally have a claim.
Yeah.
Like, hey, why did you leave fucking Nogales?
Terrorista.
Talibanes, There was like a cartel group that actually called themselves the Taliban. There's now they have a claim. And I don't know if there's going to be some sort of I don't know. Immigration reform should be at the top of the list. Yeah, build a wall, do everything you want, but immigration reform is not even being fucking talked about.
Yeah, and it hasn't been forever. It's a huge problem.
So I don't think. So again, I don't think the claim that this is being done for some sort of national security aspect or that it's being done to work against a terrorist organization, like it's there's something off about that whole process. Immigration is definitely an issue. Illegal immigration is definitely one of the biggest drugs that's being utilized by the American population as far as their work that they do for us.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And we're addicted to it.
Yeah. And you also have people. So if the system's broken and it's like impossible for someone of no means to even try to get through it with a lawyer or something like that, I understand why they want to try to come here.
Yeah.
We've also just had an open door that allows them to come here, by the way, often with the help of coyotes and the cartels themselves, who have made an enormous business out of this that you already laid out earlier in our conversation.
The illegal coyotes, because there was also government legal coyotes in the States.
That's right. That
moved them to different parts of the country. For what reason? I'm not going to say electoral reasons.
It's weird. 100%.
I'm not going to say for electoral reasons, but it was probably for electoral reasons.
It was something weird, for sure. But I'm saying, like, even forgetting that for a second, because we've covered that in here. You're 100% right. The fact that the cartels made business out of this and continue to make business out of this, out of people, and that's not being viewed as a humanitarian crisis by people in this country who are so concerned about, like, having love for everyone. What about the kids you talk about who are coming across the border with coyotes who then are sold into sexual slavery?
Yeah.
Or killed.
Yeah, and again, I get it. The border, build a wall, build it high, you know? I remember speaking to the smuggler during the whole caravan thing. Mm-hmm. And I said, like, hey, dude, like the this is the first Trump administration. It's like, hey, the Marines are across the border now. Like, is that making things difficult for you? Ha! Navidad. Like, what? It's Christmas. What do you mean? Yeah, all of the army is here, and they're very visible, and they don't separate. They don't leave each other because that's not what you do. So like, oh, ya están. Vámonos por acá, right? Also, he said, yeah, a lot of those Marines son paisanos, like they're countrymen. Mm. So like they, you know,
hit them up.
But again, corruption is on both sides.
Yes,
we're like I grew up on GI Joe too. You know, but that's not the reality that we live in.
No.
Immigration needs to be dealt with. Our dependency on illegal immigration that is kept illegal for a reason needs to be dealt with, or else none of these solutions being put forth by the current administration are really serious about anything. That's what makes me kind of doubt what's going on. And I think the play realistically, the U.S. is not trying to end terrorism in Mexico.
Yeah, there's something else there.
It's trying to get a handle or a control over the future of Mexico because it realizes the importance that it has and it holds for the future of the United States.
Do you remember like your first time because we haven't really talked about like you growing up today yet.
Can I?
Oh yeah. Quick break.
Quick break.
Right.
Hold on.
Perfect. All right, we're back. I was just asking you though, like if you can remember as a kid your first time, like I don't know what age you were, but where you realized like, oh, there's this thing called the cartel, and maybe they run some stuff around here.
I can actually really have a clear memory of this. My family was lower middle class for a while, and then it was upper for like a few, like let's say like 6 years, I think. My dad's business did pretty well.
Got it.
So some of my brothers, I have two brothers, bigger. I'm the smallest one. They went out at night and partied. This is early 90s. So this is the Ariano Felix era. So cartels were around, but cartel members were around, but I didn't know who they were. The first armored vehicle I ever saw was outside of a private school in Tijuana called El Mentor Mexicano. It's a prep school. El Mayo Zambada's son was in that school. And he had an armored vehicle. That's the first armored vehicle I ever saw when I was a kid. But I thought he was just an important man, with an important son, and he's money, so like that's why they're guarding him. There was a very weird, famous shootout in Tijuana, like some of the earliest ones, next to an open air market called El Mercado de Todos in Tijuana. It's just, it's an open air market basically, like a tianguis, like a swap meet. Cartel guys show up and get in a firefight with other cartel guys. Turns out some of them are federal cops, some of them are state cops. And both of them are basically bodyguards for rival cartel members. So they get into the shootout. So so that makes people like, wait, what's fucking going on? That's never happened in public like this before. That was like the first time it kind of like manifested itself. And I started hearing the La Maña.
La Maña?
La Maña is the mania or the tick.
Okay.
Is like a nickname for criminal organizations in Mexico. So I would hear like who was in that shooting? Era La Maña. It was the mania, the tick, the La Maña, La Mano Peluda, the hairy hand was another nickname for cartel. So cartel as a word wasn't like the one used. It was always like a weird nickname. La Maña, La Mano Peluda. Huge, funny, weird names, but you would start hearing about these people carrying around guns and like, oh, they're policía. Nobody's
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
And a very interesting phenomenon happened in Tijuana, specifically the narco junior phenomenon. So basically, rich kids or people in the middle class getting into cartel work. Some of these Arellano Felix cartel affiliated members wanted to have inroads into industry or inroads into nightlife.
Shit.
So how do you get
The kids?
So they started getting some of the kids involved in recruiting them into, hey, I need access to middle class or upper middle class Tijuana people that cross the border a lot, so I can use them as drug mules. So that's how it started manifesting in my life when I was a kid, seeing some of my neighbors being caught with fucking a kilo or more. Trying to cross a border with, you're like a rich kid. Like, what are you doing fucking smuggling drugs? And then you realize that it wasn't about the money. It was about the lifestyle.
That's right.
Power, influence, lifestyle. I know these guys. Don't fuck with me or a fucking suburban is going to show up. And that would happen. Like when I was in high school, I was a skater kid. So I didn't go into the materialistic shit myself. But some of the people that I went to high school with did. They would go to some of the famous nightclubs. There was one called in Monte Picacho. It was fucking cartel, fucking full. I don't know if it's still open, but if it is, like, don't go there.
Cat Schultz is going right now.
So there was a friend of mine went to that bar and danced with this chick there. Turns out this chick was the ex-girlfriend of a guy that went to the same school.
I thought you were going to say she was a dude.
No, it's not one of those stories. Not yet. Not yet. If you want, we can go into some of those stories, but not now. This guy shows up outside of the school. This is a private school in a very nice part of Tijuana. In the middle of the day, gets out of the car with a Draco. A Draco is a very short AK-47. It's about that big. And gets out of the car with a Draco, and I'd never seen one in real life, and I thought it was a toy.
No.
And then he just racks that thing and lets 3 rounds up into the sky. Everybody's on the ground. This kid walks out, and he fucking beats the shit out of him. 2 other guys come on, kick the shit out of this guy. Take his wallet. And his car keys, and then they leave. Ambulance comes, picks him up, and I'm watching all this shit. I'm a kid. I'm probably 16, 15. And I'm waiting for the cops to show up. I mean, there's a guy just showed up with a fucking AK in front of the school, shot 3 rounds into the air on this fucking high-value neighborhood, beat the shit out of this kid, left him an ambulance had to come with him. The cops are going to show up. Cops never show up. And that kept happening over and over again during my life.
Now you know.
Now I knew it's because of, maybe some of the guys that were in that car that came out and fucking beat the shit out of that kid were actually cops.
Yeah.
Maybe they have communication so they can tell hey, don't show up to this, it's us. So it started manifesting and showing itself in different ways while I was growing up, and again, the whole influence it had. And again, the enamorment that kids would see this lifestyle, you can carry on guns, you can go into nightclubs like that night, Tangaloo. I want to go to Tangaloo and fucking get over the line, and you start seeing all these.
Yeah.
It's sexy. It's romantic. Get a corrido written about you, and seeing basically the whole Robin Hood type scenario, celebrating these guys that fucking made it.
So you have it's kind of like as a kid, unknown, just trying to figure out the world, you kind of have these mixed emotions about them at first.
Yeah. I mean, they're romantic. They're cool in a way. It's cool that I have friends that have influence with them. And if we were picked up by the cops constantly in Tijuana, skateboarding.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
Why?
Skateboarding is a crime in Tijuana.
What?
Well, there was no skate parks, and we were kids, and we smoked weed in public, and we destroyed fucking property and shit like that.
That's what they arrest you for down there?
Yeah, they would pick us up, right?
Seems like there's some bigger priorities, but it's just me.
We would skate there's a military barracks where they have the giant Mexican flag in Tijuana. and outside there's a park, and we would basically bring our own skate gear and fucking skateboard out there. Like we welded this pole and these legs on it so we could fucking board slide and shit like that. And every now and then you would hear music coming out of the military barracks. Like weird music, like fucking Sweet Child of Mine and shit like that. We just fucking play. And you would say, sweet child. And then just the volume just would crack up and we'd be outside fucking skateboarding, right? And it was this mystery for years. And every now and then the cops would show up and fucking just pick us up and fucking take our money, steal our boards. Or if we fucking had cardio, fucking outrun those fuckers, right? Everybody would spread. Years later, I find myself in that same military barracks, only this time with a hood over my head.
A hood over your head.
When I was working for a past administration, there was this big corruption thing uncovered in the institution that I was a part of. And there was a baptism, a narcobautismo, they call it in the news. It was a baptism when a bunch of cops were swept up in this raid that the Army Special Forces had there. So while they were trying to figure out who was in on it, some of the people that were in charge of the governor's security were actually in on it. And some of those people were working with me and my team. So everybody was brought in basically for questioning. And
they put a hood over your head.
They called me to the office, and then all of a sudden I found myself in a truck full of people wearing black helmets, which is a sign for special operations.
Ooh.
And I never told this story before. And I recently talked about this publicly, but never talked about my time, that situation publicly, realistically. And I still have the scars on my wrist from the
handcuffs.
Yeah, because they were fucking torturing me as I had them on. So I was trying to get free of them. So skin peeled.
They were torturing you.
Yeah. Well, they were interrogating me. This is what they said, right? And then I realized why the Sweet Child of Mine would be playing in that fucking military barracks.
Oh my God, they're drowning it out.
Oh. I had this moment of fucking time travel. I had this moment of time travel when I was both 14, 15, fucking with my skateboard and trying to hear this music, and all of a sudden I'm there. I got a promotion afterwards, so there's a happy ending to it.
We like how you responded to how we.
Honestly,
Jesus Christ!
Honestly,
man.
they did some of that.
That's so sick. That's so sick, and that's not normal.
No, but it is there though. I wasn't the only one. There was a bunch of people were picked up, and God knows what happened to some of them. I was picked up. That happened for a while, and then I was let go. Somebody from my office went and picked me up. I went home. My ex-wife wasn't there at the time. We were already together. And fucking did my best to kind of wash myself off, I guess.
How do you you got to be a mess.
Metiolate, which is like a Mexican antimicrobial solution. Okay. Fucking use it on cows. But that's what I put on my wrist, and I wrapped them. I had a bunch of internal cuts and wounds in my mouth from just being slapped and being punched in the face so much, and a few other things. So I just fucking took a long-ass shower and drank like less than half of a bottle of tequila to kind of chill out. I was a functional alcoholic back then, so yeah, easy. And then I got a call from the director of the job that I was in at that time, and I got a promotion because they said that I just passed the most rigorous confidence filter in Mexico.
Meaning that they had determined you were not one of the people that turned. You were tortured, and they're like, well, he stood up.
And after that, I became the head of security for the governor of Baja.
Okay.
But that's the realities of shit down there.
Oh, yeah.
Extreme.
That dichotomy is insane. You're going from the skate part to hearing this music, wondering what the fuck that is, and then you're in it.
Yeah, I'm in there with a hood on. And when I say a hood, people might envision like this black cloth hood that the American CIA would use. Nah, this was a fucking plastic bag. This is a very gray, thick plastic bag over my head that was utilized multiple times to try and asphyxiate me, as far as their interrogation. So when I but that, you have to realize then then these people then turn around and say like, hey, we're cool. All that shit stays with you.
Yeah, what does that do to you psychologically? Because now you're running security for the governor, and you're nodding to people in the hallway who were doing these horrible things to you.
Yeah. Again, it's programming, it's training. People that have been through military training and have been through these fucking rigorous programmings and brainwashing will tell you, it's like, in some way, shape, or form, they convinced me that was justified, and I had to just fucking go through it. And they rewarded me by giving me more responsibility. And I relished it. I would like to tell you that I was like bitter about it or angry. The bitterness and anger only came years later when I realized it was at the root of a lot of my fucking problems.
Yeah.
From my alcoholism
Yep.
to my insomnia to my weird issues with authorities and authority figures around me, with my there's a bunch of shit that produced itself around that. And you know, this the normalization, as you say, this is normal. Like when I never spoke about any of this for years, until recently. I was on this podcast in Mexico with Agafe. And the reason I talked about it publicly with him is because he was a part of the institution that probably did that to me. And when I was describing the torture, he was like,
He's not. Oh my God.
he's nodding because he knows, he knows, right? He knows. And people are wondering hey, like, why doesn't anybody do anything? Like, why doesn't anybody raise their hand? Like, why isn't there like a youth movement trying to fight against cartels? Like, there's a lot of people like myself that are very idealistic, that want to do something and make a difference, that get programmed in some of these institutions that do the job that needs to be done. And all of a sudden, once we're done with us,
Yep.
or if we get fired from some sort of stupidity we did, if you're a cop in Mexico, at least it was like this when I was active. If you're a cop in Mexico y te das de alta en una institución, or like you become active in an institution, you immediately become disqualified to belong to another police institution and all over Mexico.
What's the logic with that rule?
They don't want people moving around. So I could be a law enforcement professional in Baja when I was active. Maybe this has changed now. But I was a law enforcement professional in Baja. If I quit the job there or I was fired, if I quit the job there and I would try and hire myself off into another institution, the first question is going to be, have you ever belonged to a police institution anywhere in Mexico? And if the answer is yes, you immediately become disqualified. So what options do people like me have?
You don't.
So, and this is just like systemic shit, internal systemic shit that is just like, there's a reason why, and I repeat this a lot, but it's true. When I started my police work in Mexico, we were patrolling the city with a bunch of federal guys in the back of the truck with big rifles, dressed in gray. The federal police back then were army guys that would just get a different uniform. They would gray uniform instead of the brown one or the tan one. And right now, the solution that the government that Claudia Sheinbaum has as far as patrolling and securing the border after the tariff threats was to send 20,000 troops that were already there on the border, dressed in gray, to patrol the cities in the back of trucks. That's not going to do shit for anything.
20,000 seems low too.
And the whole it's a snake eating its tail over and over again. Every time there's a new administration coming in, they forget about everything. They shit can everybody. They send everybody away with any sort of experience, and talent leaves. I mean, I know some things. I've worked with people who are way more talented and fucking skilled and know more about the world than I do. And a lot of these people were shit canned. Fired. Or let go because they just didn't have any use for them anymore.
Or they wouldn't play the game.
And where do you think they're going to go when you end up with?
They end up in the cartels. Do you ever talk with any of those guys now?
Every now and then.
Sources?
Every now and then.
Or now in the cartels?
Every now and then I have like some offline conversations with some of them. Again, I don't look for them. I don't try and travel to them. Right. Every now and then I'll just get this random message out of the ether. It's like, hey, remember me? It's like, yeah, what's going on? And holy shit. And I'm aware of that, and I'm like, I always go hands off, but I have my ear to the ground, and I hear. I could say this. With one of them, I heard regret that they went to work for the government. They should have started there.
Oh, in the cartels?
Yeah.
And what was his logic?
They take care of their families more. They have better pay. They have actual support behind them.
What about the shit they do, though? Did you ask him about that?
Yeah.
What'd he say?
It's worth it for their families. Which is something I guess I can understand. The acts of villainy being justified by the ability to have kids and being able to see them into the future.
So that other people can't, though.
Again, Mexico is all about.
Yeah.
Let's see the whole aspect of it later.
What did your parents like? Did you ever talk with them? Like growing up, once you kind of found out about the cartels, you see these Robin Hood type figures. Like, what did they have to say about it?
I mean, my mom was a character. It's actually her birthday today. She passed away a few years back, but
I'm sorry.
But it's pretty cool that it's her birthday and I'm here.
That's cool.
My mom was a character. She was a ninja. She grew up in a very, very dangerous part of Tijuana, a shanty town. It's gone now. It was swept away by a storm.
By a storm?
Yeah, it used to be called Cartonlandia, or the cardboard land, basically. There was a storm, and it was right on the Tijuana River estuary. That's where she lived. Horrible family situation. Dad abandoned them when she was about 12, I think. She always carried a knife since she was a kid. That's who I learned that from. She was a very religious Catholic. She hated. That's where she grew up.
Whoa, that was her neighborhood.
That was her neighborhood, Cartonlandia. There was a giant storm in DJ, and that swept all that shit away.
I now see what you mean.
That's where she grew up. So she had, like, I show a lot of tradecraft stuff to people in government. I show them how to do a lot of sneaky shit. I have to say that my mom was probably the biggest ninja I've ever met. She was a nurse, so like we would go to, like, if you're a nurse in Mexico, you're basically like a surgeon general, you know? Like somebody needs an injection, they'll knock on the door. If somebody gets shot and they want to go to the hospital, they'll knock on your door. My mom was like a community doctor in a lot of ways. So that's who I learned most of the ways I am, I guess, from. My dad, on the other hand, a dandy, you know? He's like a fun guy, party, you know, carefree dude. None of them involved in any sort of criminal activities, like none of that shit. Like none of them are, like both of them are God-fearing, fucking fairness, the law, and just fucking do things that's like both of them clean in that way. When they start seeing a lot of this shit just creeping into our lives, I get warnings about it, basically.
They didn't want that for you, obviously.
No. So you can imagine their surprise when their kid with spiky hair. And
you had spiky hair?
I had a spiky. I'll show you a picture if you want.
Yeah. I gotta see that. You took it all. I was gonna ask you, like, were you emo? I guess you went the whole way.
No, I exploited. I used to listen to the Exploited a lot. UK subs, like Rancid. Then I was into the weird ska shit for a while. But I was like a spiky hair, you know, Operation Ivy. That was my thing. I was spiky hair, you know? And all of a sudden, I shave all that off and I hand them over my orders. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? So I'm going to go be a part of this. And they were like, both of them obviously viewed it as a death sentence.
Because you're going on the right side of things and the other ones are so powerful.
Yeah. So both of them viewed it as a death sentence. And this is from parents that had lost a child already.
Yeah, what happened with your brother?
He passed away in a very traumatic way. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay. How old were you?
13.
Okay.
My mom went psychiatric and my dad went alcoholic when that happened. So in a lot of ways, I kind of raised myself after that. And while they were kind of getting their shit together and they became president again in my life, is when I dropped the whole, I'm gonna go off to do this shit. They were horrified. My mom specifically was horrified by it. She's like, what the and more so about the fact that they were going to use me. Like that, she was onto it. But I refused to see it. Both of them gave me some pieces of advice when I graduated. Don't get into anybody's pocket. Don't let anybody own you. And nobody's against you. They're for themselves. Learn this and treat everybody like a friend. Basically, is what my mom told me when I graduated and I got this gold-colored shield badge. And a radio, a handgun that I've never shot before, 2 magazines, fucking cheap-ass second chance vest, and off I went.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.